Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. Imagine paying $1,200 for a property survey that everyone said was a waste of money, until the day the HOA destroyed my backyard. They thought they owned the neighborhood, but they didn't realize I owned a secret strip of land they had no power over. Ready to see the ultimate legal backfire? I need to start by saying I'm not the type of person who goes looking for fights. My job as a project manager has taught me that most conflicts can be avoided with good planning and proper documentation. I keep detailed records of everything, and I mean everything. My filing system at home would probably seem excessive to most people, but it saved me more than once. This particular story is about the time that habit paid off in ways I never could have imagined. 3 years ago, I bought my house in what I'd call a moderately strict HOA community. The development was relatively new, maybe 5 or 6 years old when I moved in. The house itself was perfect for what I needed, but the real selling point was the backyard. My property backs onto a small public nature preserve with a walking trail that winds through about 20 acres of protected woodland. Being able to step out my back door and be on that trail in seconds was worth every penny of the asking price. The HOA here has a reputation. Nothing terrible, but they're known for being particular about things. Lawn height, holiday decoration timelines, paint colors, the usual stuff. I did my research before buying and decided I could live with the rules as long as I followed them to the letter. I'm good at following rules when they make sense, and I'm even better at knowing when they don't apply to me. When I bought the place, I did something that most people probably skip. I paid for a premium land survey. Not just the basic boundary markers, but a full professional survey with detailed measurements, historical research, and parcel identification. It cost me about $1,200, but I figured it was worth it for peace of mind. That survey turned up something interesting. There's a 4-foot wide strip of land at the very back of my property. It runs along the entire rear boundary line where my yard meets the nature preserve. According to the survey, this strip has its own separate parcel number. The surveyor explained that it used to be a utility right-of-way from decades ago, probably for power lines or something similar. At some point, the city abandoned it and sold it to the previous homeowner back in the early 1990s, long before this neighborhood even existed. The previous owner had it legally merged with the main property deed. Here's where it gets interesting. The HOA was formed in 2015 when the development started. The master plan they used for the community was based on the developer's original layout, which apparently never accounted for this weird little strip. As far as the HOA's records show, that 4-foot wide piece of land doesn't exist in their documentation. It's not governed by their rules because it predates their authority and was never formally included in their jurisdiction. I realized this pretty quickly when I read through the survey results. I had my real estate attorney verify it, and she confirmed that yes, this strip of land was mine free and clear with no HOA strings attached. I filed all the paperwork away in my home office and didn't think much about it. It was just an interesting quirk of the property. About 6 months after I moved in, I decided to put up a fence. I submitted all the required applications to the HOA Architectural Committee, waited for approval, and had a standard wooden privacy fence installed around my backyard. Everything was by the book, approved materials, approved height, approved color. But I also did something else. On that 4-foot strip, completely separate from the HOA-approved fence, I had a contractor install a simple wooden gate. It was tasteful, matched the fence style, and gave me direct access to the walking trail without having to go around through the front yard. The gate wasn't visible from the street at all. You could only see it from the trail itself, or maybe from a couple of the neighboring backyards, and even then you'd have to be looking for it. I never mentioned this gate to the HOA. I didn't need to. It wasn't on their land, it wasn't governed by their rules, and frankly, it wasn't their business. For almost 3 years, that gate served me perfectly. I'd come home from work, change into my running shoes, and be out on the trail in 30 seconds. It was one of the best features of the house. Now let me tell you about the head of the Architectural Control Committee. I'm going to call her Karen, even though that wasn't her real name, but it fits. She's exactly what you'd picture when you think of someone who seeks out this kind of petty authority. She lives about 4 houses down from me, and I'd had a few run-ins with her before. Nothing major. The first one was about 2 months after I moved in. She left a note on my door about my welcome mat. Apparently it was half an inch too wide according to some obscure rule about front porch decorations. I replaced it with a smaller one just to avoid the hassle. Then there was the time she measured my grass with an actual ruler because she thought it looked too long. It was within the allowed range, but she measured it anyway, right there on my lawn, at 7 in the morning on a Saturday. She had this way of making everything sound official and important. Every interaction came with references to specific bylaw articles and section numbers. She'd been on the committee for 4 years and treated it like she was running a government agency instead of a neighborhood volunteer board. So when I came home on a Friday afternoon after a particularly long week at work, the last thing I expected was to find my gate missing. But that's exactly what happened. I pulled into my driveway around 5:30, tired and ready for the weekend. I grabbed my work bag and walked into the house through the garage. My kitchen has a big window that looks out over the backyard, and as I was setting my bag down on the counter, something caught my eye. The space at the back of my yard looked wrong somehow. I walked closer to the window and that's when I saw it. Where my wooden gate should have been, there was just an empty gap. I stood there for a moment thinking maybe I was seeing things wrong, maybe the angle was playing tricks on me. But no, the gate was definitely gone. I went outside to investigate. The damage was immediately apparent. The gate itself had been completely removed, nowhere to be seen. The 2 fence posts it had been attached to were splintered and damaged. It looked like someone had used a crowbar or something similar to rip the hinges off without caring about the wood. There were gouges in the posts, splinters on the ground, and the whole thing looked like it had been done quickly and roughly. Zip-tied to one of the damaged posts was a laminated notice. It was printed on white paper, very professional looking, with the HOA logo at the top. I pulled it off and read it. The notice said that according to their bylaws, specifically Article 9, Section 4 about fencing and enclosures, unauthorized modifications were subject to immediate remediation. It stated that my non-compliant gate structure had been removed by an authorized HOA vendor to restore community aesthetic standards. It ended by informing me that an invoice for labor and disposal would be mailed to me shortly. It was signed by the Architectural Control Committee. I read the notice twice, then I looked at the damage. Then I looked in the direction of Karen's house, even though I couldn't see it from where I was standing. And I felt this very calm, very cold feeling settle over me. It wasn't anger exactly, it was more like the feeling you get when you realize you're about to win a game your opponent doesn't even know they're playing. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. I photographed everything. The gap where the gate had been from multiple angles, close-ups of the splintered post showing the damage, a detailed shot of the laminated notice, making sure the text was readable. Wide shots showing exactly where the gate had been located relative to the rest of the yard and the nature preserve beyond. I took a video walking from my back door to the damaged area, narrating what I was seeing. I must have taken 40 or 50 photos in total. Then I went inside, poured myself a drink, and sat down at my computer. I wasn't going to call Karen, I wasn't going to storm over to her house, I was going to do this the right way, the way that would leave a perfect paper trail. I drafted an email to the official HOA board address. I made sure to CC the management company that handles the administrative work for the HOA. The email was polite, professional, and carefully worded. The subject line was simple: inquiry regarding property damage at my address. The body of the email explained that I had returned home that afternoon to find that the gate providing access from my backyard to the nature preserve had been removed, and that the adjoining fence posts had been damaged. I mentioned the notice that had been left. Then I made 2 very specific requests. First, I asked for a copy of the specific board resolution or vote authorizing an HOA agent to enter private property and remove the structure, including the date of that authorization. Second, I asked for the full business name, contact information, and contractor license number of the authorized vendor who had performed the work. I thanked them for their prompt attention and hit send. Then I sat back and waited. I didn't have to wait long. Karen monitors that email address constantly. Within about 45 minutes, I had a response. Her email was exactly what I expected. The tone was dismissive and condescending, like she was explaining something to a child who didn't understand how the world worked. She said that as stated in the notice, my unapproved gate had been in violation of HOA rules. She claimed that I had been sent 2 prior warnings by mail and that they had delivery confirmation records. She explained that the board wasn't required to hold a special vote for enforcing existing bylaws, as if I had suggested something ridiculous. Then came the part I needed most. She wrote that the vendor information was for internal use only and would not be provided to me. She told me to ensure my property remained compliant going forward, and she informed me that an invoice for $650 for the remediation service would arrive in my mail the following week. I read her email 3 times and my smile got a little wider each time. She had just admitted in writing that the HOA had ordered the removal. She had confirmed they were refusing to provide contractor details, and she had stated their intention to bill me. She'd given me everything I needed, all in one neat little email that I could forward to anyone who asked. I spent most of that weekend in my home office. I pulled out all my files related to the property, the survey, the parcel records from the county, the deed history, everything. I organized it all chronologically and made copies of the most important documents. On Monday morning, I drafted a formal demand letter. This one wasn't going just to the board email address. I found the personal email addresses of every board member I could locate through public HOA meeting minutes and property records. I sent it to all of them, plus the management company, plus the main HOA address. The subject line was direct. Formal demand for restitution and notice of intent to pursue legal action for trespass, vandalism, and theft. The body of the letter was no longer friendly. I'd spent hours getting the language right, making it sound formal and serious without being overly aggressive. I stated the facts clearly. On this specific date, an agent acting under the HOA's admitted direction had illegally entered my property, destroyed my personal property in the form of damaged fence posts valued at $200, and committed theft of my personal property in the form of a custom-built gate valued at $800. Then came the part I'd been waiting 3 years to use. I explained that their actions were based on a fundamental error. I directed them to the attachments, which included a certified property survey and county parcel records. I specifically noted that the gate had been located on a particular parcel number, a 4-foot wide strip of land that was deeded to me and had never been under HOA jurisdiction. I pointed out that their bylaws therefore had no authority over that specific piece of property. The attachments told the whole story. Photos of the damage, a copy of Karen's email response, the complete property survey with the strip of land highlighted, and the county parcel record showing the ownership history going back to when the city abandoned the right-of-way. Then I laid out my demands. They had 10 business days to meet all conditions in full. First, provide a cashier's check for $1,500 to cover the full replacement cost of a new, superior quality gate and repair of the damaged fence by a licensed contractor of my choosing. Second, issue a formal written apology from the board for the illegal trespass and destruction of property. Third, confirm in writing that Karen would be permanently removed from the Architectural Control Committee due to her gross negligence in this matter. I outlined what would happen if they failed to meet these demands. A police report for vandalism and theft, a civil lawsuit against the HOA and each board member individually for damages, legal fees, and punitive damages, a formal complaint to the state's Real Estate Regulatory Board about the management company's practices. I proofread it 4 times before sending it. Then I hit send and went to work. The response came faster than I anticipated. By Tuesday afternoon, I started getting calls. The HOA president, who I'd barely interacted with before, left 3 voicemails. The management company called twice. Even one of the other board members, someone I'd never spoken to, sent me a text asking if we could talk. I didn't respond to any of them immediately. I wanted them to sit with it for a bit. On Wednesday morning, the HOA president called again. This time I answered. His name was Tom, and he'd always seemed like a reasonable guy in the few HOA meetings I'd attended. He handled the call about as well as he could have, given the circumstances. He started by apologizing profusely. He said there had been a terrible misunderstanding based on outdated maps and records. He explained that the board had held an emergency meeting the night before and that corrective action was being taken internally. He said he was authorized to agree to the financial demands immediately and asked where they should send the check. I let him talk. When he was done, I asked about the personnel change regarding Karen. He hesitated on that one. He said that Karen would be severely reprimanded and that she'd be required to undergo additional training on HOA governance and property boundaries. He suggested that perhaps that would be sufficient resolution. I told him I appreciated his call, but that I'd need everything confirmed in writing, including the removal of Karen from the committee as specified in my demand letter. I explained that once I had the check in hand and saw the satisfactory installation of my new gate, I would consider the matter closed, but only if all terms were met. He said he'd get back to me and ended the call. Thursday morning, I received an email from Tom. It was formal and carefully worded, clearly reviewed by their attorney. The email confirmed the HOA's agreement to provide payment in the amount of $1,500 via cashier's check. It included a formal apology from the board for the incident, stating that it resulted from an administrative error in their property records and should never have occurred, and it confirmed that Karen had decided to step down from the Architectural Control Committee effective immediately, though the wording made it sound like it was her choice. The check arrived by courier that afternoon, $1,500 exactly as demanded. I deposited it immediately. I took my time finding the right contractor for the new gate. I wanted something significantly better than what had been there before. I found a company that specialized in custom metalwork and ordered a powder-coated aluminum gate with a smooth hydraulic closing mechanism. It was beautiful, much nicer than the original wooden gate, and it cost about $1,300 installed. The extra $200 covered the fence post repairs and my trouble. The installation happened on a Saturday morning. The crew showed up with their truck and equipment, and several neighbors came out to watch. Word had gotten around that something had happened between me and the HOA, though I hadn't shared the details with anyone. The new gate was visible enough during installation that it was clear this was no ordinary replacement. The lead installer was a guy who'd been doing custom metalwork for about 15 years. He told me he'd worked on some high-end properties in the area, and that this particular gate model was usually reserved for houses in the $1 million-plus range. He seemed genuinely impressed that I'd chosen such a premium option for what was essentially trail access. I explained to him that I wanted something durable and reliable, something that would last decades without maintenance issues. He assured me that powder-coated aluminum was the right choice, that it wouldn't rust, wouldn't need repainting, and the hydraulic mechanism was rated for thousands of cycles. The installation took about 3 hours. They had to secure new mounting brackets to the repaired fence posts, adjust the alignment to ensure the gate swung perfectly, and calibrate the hydraulic closer so it had just the right amount of resistance. I watched most of the process, asking questions here and there about the technical aspects. When they finished, I tested it several times. The gate opened smoothly with minimal force, stayed open at any position I released it, and then closed automatically with a soft, controlled motion ending in a quiet click. It looked absolutely premium. The powder coating had a slight metallic sheen that caught the light beautifully, and the whole thing just felt solid and well engineered. One of the installers mentioned that this type of gate usually goes on much more expensive properties. I thanked him and said it was exactly what I wanted. As they were packing up their tools, a neighbor from across the street walked over and complimented the craftsmanship. He asked if I was planning any other upgrades to the backyard. I told him probably not, that this was really all I needed. The following Tuesday was the monthly HOA meeting. I usually didn't attend these, but I made a point of going to this one. I walked in about 5 minutes early and took a seat in the back row. The room was more crowded than usual, probably because rumors had been spreading. I noticed several neighbors glancing at me as I came in. One couple I'd spoken to a few times at neighborhood events gave me a subtle thumbs up. Word travels fast in a community like this, and while I hadn't shared details with anyone, people had clearly noticed the new gate installation and put 2 and 2 together. Tom ran the meeting, and when they got to committee reports, he announced that there had been a change in the Architectural Control Committee leadership. He said that Karen had decided to step down to pursue other interests, and that the board appreciated her years of service. He didn't mention anything about why she'd really left, and I certainly wasn't going to bring it up. Karen wasn't at the meeting, which was notable since she'd attended every single meeting for the past 4 years without fail. Her absence spoke volumes. One of the other committee members, someone who'd apparently been dealing with her micromanaging for years, looked visibly relieved when Tom made the announcement. After the meeting ended, a few neighbors approached me. One older gentleman who lived 2 streets over mentioned that he'd had issues with the architectural committee being overly aggressive about minor things, and he seemed pleased that there had been some kind of accountability. I kept my responses vague and polite. I wasn't interested in becoming the neighborhood hero or making Karen into some kind of villain. I'd gotten what I needed, and that was enough. The next few weeks were quiet. I went about my normal routine, went to work, came home, used my new gate to access the trail for my evening walks. The gate continued to perform perfectly, and I found myself appreciating the upgrade more each day. The hydraulic mechanism meant I could open it with one hand even when carrying something, and it never slammed shut like the old wooden gate occasionally did on windy days. A few days later, I received a formal letter on official HOA stationery. It was addressed to me personally and signed by all 5 board members. The letter apologized for the incident involving my property, acknowledged that it resulted from errors in their property boundary records, and confirmed that steps had been taken to update their master plan to reflect accurate parcel information. It thanked me for bringing the matter to their attention in a professional manner. I filed that letter away with all the other documentation. The whole situation had created quite a paper trail, and I wanted to make sure I kept everything organized just in case. Now, a few months later, I'm sitting in my backyard on a pleasant evening with a cold drink, looking at that beautiful new gate. I open and close it occasionally, just because I can, enjoying the smooth mechanism and the quiet way it latches. It's significantly better than what was there before, and I didn't pay a cent for it. The HOA has been notably quiet since then. I haven't received any violation notices, no surprise inspections, nothing. Tom nods pleasantly when we cross paths in the neighborhood. The new head of the Architectural Control Committee is apparently much more careful about checking property records before taking action. I still have all the documentation filed away in my home office. The survey, the emails, the demand letter, the apology, all of it. I probably won't ever need it again, but having it organized and accessible gives me peace of mind. There's something satisfying about being prepared. Most people probably would have bought the house, accepted the basic survey, and never known about that little strip of land. They would have put up a gate in the same spot and assumed it was covered by HOA rules like everything else. When the HOA came to remove it, they would have argued and complained, but ultimately they wouldn't have had any legal standing. But I had done my homework. I had paid for the detailed survey, I had kept every document, and when the HOA made their move, I was ready. Some people might say I was lucky, that it was just a coincidence that the gate happened to be on that separate parcel. But luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, and I'd prepared thoroughly from day one. Karen learned an expensive lesson about the importance of verifying facts before acting. The HOA learned that not all property within their community falls under their authority. And I learned that sometimes the best investment you can make is in proper documentation and professional surveys. Every time I walk through that gate now, I'm reminded of something important. The best defense isn't anger or loud complaints. It's having the facts on your side and knowing exactly what your rights are. The HOA thought they were dealing with a simple compliance issue. What they were actually doing was trespassing on private property that they had no authority over. That gate cost them $1,500 plus whatever they paid their attorney to review my demand letter plus the cost of dealing with the fallout when Karen had to step down. For me, it cost nothing and got me a significant upgrade. I taught them a lesson about doing their research before taking action, and I came out on top with a gate that's probably the nicest one in the entire neighborhood. Every time that smooth hydraulic mechanism closes with its quiet click, I'm reminded that knowledge, preparation, and documentation will beat aggressive enforcement every single time. The nature preserve is still there, the trail is still peaceful, and now I have an even better way to access it. The HOA stays on their side of the property line, and I stay on mine. And that 4-foot strip of land that technically doesn't exist in their records continues to be exactly what it is. My property, free and clear, with a very expensive gate that they kindly paid for. I taught them a lesson and came out on top. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I work at a big retail chain where the stockroom is the Wild West and chaos is the norm. We recently got a new supervisor, Sarah, who seems to think she's running the Navy SEALs or something. She's obsessed with speed, constantly on us about how we need to get things done faster. Doesn't matter if it's done right, as long as it's done fast. So one day during peak restock time when we're drowning in boxes, Sarah storms in with her clipboard and her best I'm in charge face. She corners me while I'm halfway through a massive inventory check and says, "You're taking way too long with these. Just get through them quickly. We don't have time to check every single item." I try to explain that rushing inventory checks is a bad idea, but she cuts me off with a condescending smile. "If you can't speed this up, maybe this job isn't the right fit for you," she says, all smug like she just dropped a bombshell. "All right, Sarah, you want speed? Let's see how fast things can spiral out of control." So I take her words to heart and decide to follow her instructions exactly. The next day, I'm scheduled for another inventory check. Instead of my usual process where I count everything carefully, I decide to play Sarah's game. I glance at the shelves and make up numbers that seem about right. I don't even bother opening boxes to check if what's inside matches the labels. I fly through the whole process, marking items off like I'm speedrunning a video game. What usually takes me 2 hours, I finish in just 20 minutes. Sarah sees me finish up and I can see her eyes light up. She walks over, grinning ear to ear. "See, that wasn't so hard, was it? If you keep this up, you might even get a little bonus this month," she says, patting herself on the back for her brilliant leadership skills. Fast forward a week, and the store manager, Mike, calls an emergency meeting. The inventory reports have come back, and they're a total disaster. According to the report, we're missing thousands of dollars worth of products. It looks like we either lost half the stock or we're running some underground black market. Mike's pissed, customers are complaining about out-of-stock items, and the regional manager is breathing down his neck. Mike turns to Sarah and asks her to explain how this could have happened. Sarah, trying to save face, immediately points at the team and says, "They must have messed up the counts. They weren't thorough enough." She's throwing us under the bus without a second thought. This is where I decide to strike. I raise my hand and say, "Actually, I did exactly what Sarah told us to do. She said to skip checking the items and just get it done as quickly as possible. I was just following orders." You could hear a pin drop. Mike slowly turns to Sarah, his expression going from confused to furious. "Is this true?" he asks, narrowing his eyes at her. Sarah's stammering now, trying to backtrack. "Well, I didn't mean to skip it entirely. I just meant to speed it up." But it's too late. The damage is done. Mike's already fuming. "So you decided to cut corners on the one thing that affects our bottom line? You do realize we have to do a full recount now because of this mess, right?" And that's exactly what happens. The next day, Sarah and a few unlucky team members spend 12 hours redoing the entire inventory check from scratch. The rest of us get to enjoy watching them sweat it out while we handle our regular duties. It's glorious. As they're counting, I make sure to walk by every so often and ask, "Need any help speeding things up? I could skip a few checks for you if that helps." The look on Sarah's face every time is pure rage mixed with embarrassment. She can't say anything because she knows I'm just doing what she asked for. By the end of it, we found thousands of dollars in discrepancies. Turns out rushing through inventory checks leaves a lot of room for errors. Who knew? The regional manager isn't happy, and Sarah ends up getting a formal warning. She stops harping on us about speed after that and even tries to be extra nice whenever I'm around. Guess she realized that maybe, just maybe, some tasks shouldn't be rushed. The best part? A couple of weeks later, I get a small bonus for outstanding attention to detail in helping fix the inventory mess. Oh, the irony. Sarah couldn't even look me in the eye when I got the bonus slip. And every time she walks by me now, I just give her a friendly smile and say, "Don't worry, boss. I'm working as fast as you want." The next one is an entitled people story. Woo, can't believe I now have stories to post here. So, I used to work in the service industry, but for the last 4 years I've worked a 9-to-5 office job. However, this week marks my first week doing some volunteer shifts in a nearby charity shop, thrift store for my American friends. I have been in literally twice so far to help out, and already have some amazing interactions I wanted to share. Here are my best interactions from this week. 1. Guy comes in and is browsing our jeans section. He pulls me aside and very seriously points to a mark on one of the pairs of jeans he was looking at. He tells me these jeans are damaged, and if he buys them, can he have a discount? The mark on the jeans, a rip. Why? They were ripped jeans. He insists that they are damaged, pointing at this one spot. I take the jeans off the rail and start pointing, see here, and see here. There's more than one rip because they are ripped jeans. He did not purchase the jeans. 2. Woman comes in with a toddler who has a chocolate ice cream in her hand. The woman takes the ice cream from her daughter and tells her to rummage through the toy bins to see if she can find something she likes. This mother makes no attempt to wipe her child's hands, which are covered in melted chocolate ice cream. So, all the toys in the bins are now covered in melted chocolate ice cream. FML 3. Guy comes in absolutely screaming at the manager from the get-go. Turns out his wife donated some of his jeans without him knowing, and they had nearly $1,000 in cash in the pocket. The donation was only dropped off a few hours before, and no one has even opened the bag yet. Manager lets him look through the bag to find the jeans and money. He finds the jeans, but there is no money. Let me emphasize, no one has even opened this bag yet, but he goes off screaming about how one of us must have taken the money out of the bag and pocketed it. Manager assures him that no one has touched the clothes. Dude leaves and comes back an hour later saying that his wife didn't take the money, so we must have. Again, we didn't. Only me and my manager had been working that day, and the bag was literally unopened. After a few more choice words, he leaves, and hopefully will not come back. 4. This one has got to be the worst. This couple comes in with a small bag of clothes to donate and 2 suitcases. They position the suitcases with the small one in front of the bigger one and say they have some donations. As the guy lets go of the bigger suitcase, I immediately see it tilt, and am 100% certain that it's missing a wheel. I come over as they try to leave and say, "Are the suitcases damaged?" The guy says no, so I move the smaller suitcase. I point at the suitcase and say, it only has 3 wheels. The guy absolutely insists that it is not broken. I'm like, dude, it literally has 3 wheels. I can see there are only 3 wheels. He again says, no, it's not broken. Manager comes over and sees the 3-wheeled suitcase, and the dude keeps trying to argue with her that the suitcase is not damaged. Like, sorry, what? I laugh at this point because of the sheer audacity. The manager says he needs to take the larger suitcase because we cannot sell a 3-wheeled suitcase. The couple leave sheepishly, and I think that's the end of it. At the end of my shift, I leave and see that these gems of society have literally dumped the 3-wheeled suitcase on the pavement, maybe 10 meters from the front of the shop. Yeah. That's all for the first few days of working there. I love it so far, despite the odd a-hole. The next one is an entitled parent story. First off, this was back when I was a 15-year-old freshman in high school. I'm 23 now. And before high school, I actually didn't believe I needed glasses. But then I realized that things were blurry far away but clear up close. I still thought it was normal till my home ec teacher noticed and told me that I may need glasses, and I brought it up to my mom, who immediately didn't believe, as I once said, maybe a year ago, that I look good in glasses and I only wanted them to look good, and I just rolled my eyes as I knew that it wouldn't matter what I said. But then as school went on, my others teachers began to notice that I would squint and lean closer to the board to take notes, and this time my science teacher was the one who wanted me to go to the nurse's office to do an eye check. It was my only time in the office, and when I came in, the 2 nurses looked annoyed as I interpreted their gossip, but I just gave them the slip my teacher gave me, and they sighed and made me stand in front of the board with all those letters to see if I could see them. But the things was that they placed me close enough that it was clear I was like maybe 3 feet away from it, and I was honest saying that I could see clearly this close, but tried to explain that I couldn't farther away, but they cut me off saying that I didn't need glasses and it was a waste of their time just so someone can skip class. I rolled my eyes once I left because I honestly been done with most adults in my life at that point. So I went back to class and my teacher asked me what they said, and I just said that they told me that I didn't need glasses and just looked kinda confused and went to the nurse's office herself as a neighbor teacher watched us. I don't know what she did, but she came back with an envelope and handed it to me to give to my mom. And I did once I got home, and when my mom read it, she kinda had a look like, great, now I gotta go get her eyes checked. So we went to an actual eye doctor, and my mom kept making remarks saying that she's wasting money on this appointment just to see that I don't need glasses. But after the appointment, the doctors confirmed that of course, I needed glasses. I gave my mom a crap-eating grin and basically saying, I told you so. After that, she apologized, in her way, by helping me pick out glasses that'll look good on me. Not a very interesting story, but a story that I still remember from time to time. Anyway, thank you for watching.